He gave up his taxi for a rushed woman, single mom with a newborn baby, unaware she was a millionaire who couldn't forget him. Manhattan pulsed with energy, even as storm clouds began to gather overhead. Late afternoon traffic painted the streets in chaotic hues of red brake lights and yellow cabs, honking horns echoing like restless drumbeats. Pedestrians rushed along the sidewalks with heads down, umbrellas half opened, fighting the first hints of rain on their cheeks. The air was heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. Liam Walker stood on the corner of 5th and East 74th, shoulders slightly hunched under his dark navy jacket. He had just stepped out of an outpatient clinic where the walls were far too white and the questions far too personal. He hated those visits, even though he knew he needed them. 35 years old, tall, lean, with a rugged face that bore quiet battle scars, none visible but all real. His eyes scanned the street with that quiet caution that lingered long after fire and smoke were gone. He raised his arm and waved, catching the attention of an approaching yellow cab. The light blinked, signaling it was available, and Liam took one step forward just as the drizzle turned into a light rain. The driver slowed, pulling toward the curb, and Liam reached for the door handle. He was just about to slide into the back seat when, "Wait, please, wait!" The voice came from behind, urgent, breathless, cracking with panic. He turned. A woman was running toward him, stumbling slightly as she clutched a small bundle wrapped in a pale pink blanket. Her blonde hair clung to her cheeks in damp waves, and her face, pale, frightened, almost translucent in the streetlight glow, was flushed with desperation. She held the baby close to her chest, both arms wrapped protectively around it, as if shielding it from more than just the rain. Liam froze, caught in that split second of choice. She slowed as she neared him, clearly on the brink of collapsing. Her lips trembled, and her breathing came in short gasps. She did not look up at him, not right away, only at the taxi. The driver began to lean toward the curb, impatient. Liam stepped back, then opened the door wider and looked at her. "Take it," he said calmly. "You look like you've been running longer than me." The woman blinked at him, water dripping from her lashes. Her eyes were wide, gray pew like a storm on the verge of breaking. Thank you, I just need to go. Now," she whispered, voice cracking with exhaustion and something that sounded like fear. She climbed in, holding the baby close, her hand gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her from falling. Liam watched the cab pull away, tail lights disappearing into the rainy blur of the avenue. He did not know her name. He did not know where she was going, but the image of her, so fragile, so fiercely maternal, etched itself into his memory like a brand. A cold gust swept past, lifting the edge of his jacket. He stuffed his hands into his pockets and looked up as the sky darkened further. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. He should have been on his way. His mother's apartment was only a few blocks down, but something in the encounter had pressed pause on everything else. For a long moment he just stood there, staring at the traffic that swallowed the taxi whole. Inside that cab, the woman sat curled around her infant, lips trembling, her hand shaking as she wiped at her cheeks. She did not know who he was. She had barely seen his face, but as the vehicle sped away, she turned to glance back through the misted window. Liam was still standing on the sidewalk, soaked, silent, still watching. There was something about him, something that felt safe. Neither of them realized this moment, fleeting, wordless, soaked in the haze of early summer rain, would be the one they both returned to again and again. It was not dramatic, not heroic, but it was exactly what she needed. A simple kindness, no questions, no conditions, and then she was gone. No name, no number, no trace. The scent of roasted coffee beans filled the small cafe near Mount Sinai Hospital, where the late morning crowd shuffled in and out, their conversations muffled under the hum of espresso machines. It was the kind of place that seemed to belong to no one, just another corner in a city of a million corners. Liam Walker pushed open the glass door, holding it for an elderly woman behind him before stepping inside. He had just dropped his mother off for her physical therapy session and was looking for something warm to fill the hollow ache in his chest that had nothing to do with hunger. His eyes scanned the cafe, looking for a quiet seat by the window. Then he froze. She was there. The woman from the rain. She sat in the corner booth, a gray hoodie pulled over her hair, cradling a baby in her arms as she gently bounced her knee. The infant's head rested against her shoulder, tiny fingers curling into her sweatshirt. She whispered something soothing while glancing toward the counter, where a barista called out, "Oat milk latte for Clara." Liam blinked. Clara. Her name was Clara. She turned her head at the sound, her eyes meeting his just as she stood to grab her drink. For a moment, neither of them moved. The clatter of cups and distant hum of conversation faded behind a sudden quiet between them. Recognition flickered across her face, first surprised, then softening into something else, something like relief. "Hi," she said, voice almost inaudible. Liam nodded, stepping toward her. "Looks like you found a cab after all." She exhaled a quiet laugh, "Thanks to you." They sat together without needing to ask. He slid into the seat across from her, and she gently adjusted the baby in her arms before meeting his gaze. Her features were still tired, but not as fragile. The storm in her eyes had quieted, a little. "I never got to thank you," she said. "You just did," Liam replied, offering a faint smile. For a few moments they sat in silence, sipping their coffee. Clara looked down at the baby, brushing a soft curl from the infant's forehead. "I feel like I should explain," she murmured. "I don't know why. I barely said this out loud. But you just feel like someone I can say it to." Liam didn't move, just listened. "I'm Clara Everson," she said quietly. "CEO of Everson Global. Well, I was. A few weeks ago, a board member leaked news that I was pregnant. No partner, no explanation. The media spun it into scandal, investors panicked. I was asked to take time off, which is a pretty way of saying disappear until we clean up your mess." She looked out the window. "So I did." Liam absorbed her words without judgment. "I had the baby alone," Clara continued. "No one knew, not even my assistant. The night I ran into you, I was trying to get to a safe house outside the city. I didn't even know if the cab would get me there. I just needed to get away." She paused, her voice catching. "I don't even know why I'm telling you all this." Liam's reply was soft but steady. "Because I'm not trying to fix you. Just listening." She looked at him then, really looked, and there was no pity in his expression, no attempt to offer advice, just presence. "And you?" she asked. "What's your story?" He shrugged gently. "Used to be a firefighter, not anymore." She waited for more, but he did not offer it. She did not press. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Rain began to fall in thick, sudden drops, streaking the windows and sending cafe patrons scrambling to shut laptops and grab umbrellas. Clara shifted, pulling the baby's blanket higher. Liam stood up and walked to the door, pulling a black umbrella from the stand. He returned, holding it open with one hand while gesturing toward the exit with the other. "Come on," he said, with that same calm tone from the rain-soaked street a week before. As they stepped out, Liam tilted the umbrella forward, not over himself, but entirely over Clara and the baby. His jacket quickly soaked through as he adjusted his stance, angling himself between her and the curious eyes of passers-by. He made sure no one saw her face. Clara noticed, and in that simple gesture, silent, protective, unasked, something shifted inside her. She looked at him again, really looked, and this time her eyes did not show fear or exhaustion. They showed trust. The clock read 2:13, IEM when the first crack of electricity popped through the silence. A faulty wire behind the kitchen wall, old, corroded, hidden deep in the bones of the rental, sparked once, then again, before catching hold of a curtain's edge. Within minutes, smoke coiled upward like a serpent, hungry and silent. Clara slept on the second floor, curled protectively around Lily, her cheek resting against her daughter's tiny back. The baby stirred slightly in her sleep, unaware of the heat building beneath the floorboards. When the smoke reached their room, Clara coughed once, then woke abruptly, blinking through the haze. She sat up fast. The air already felt thick and her instincts kicked in before her mind could fully catch up. She grabbed Lily and stumbled toward the door, but the hallway beyond was already choked with smoke and flickering orange light. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, clutching her baby tighter. "Not now." The stairs crackled below. Flames danced across the banister. Clara backed into the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and rushed to the window. It refused to open. Her fingers fumbled at the lock, slick with sweat and panic. She screamed, "Help! Someone, please! My baby!" Outside, neighbors were already gathering. Some were filming. Others called 911. But no one moved toward the house. Then a voice cut through the murmurs. "Is anyone inside?" He had been on his way back from a late shift at the driving school when he saw the smoke. He parked halfway on the curb and ran, ignoring the pain that bloomed in his chest. Now, standing before the burning house, his breath caught in his throat. The front porch was engulfed. The windows glowed like eyes. The sound of Clara's voice, faint, cracking with terror, reached him from above. He froze. His heart began to pound, the rhythm stuttering into chaos. Smoke filled his nostrils, and suddenly he was no longer standing on this street. He was back in the past, inside another burning house, another night, another scream, a teammate crying for help, the ceiling collapsing, flames licking the side of his helmet, and his hands, his damn hands, shaking, slipping, failing. Liam clutched at the railing, his knuckles white. "Not again," he murmured, voice breaking. "Please, don't make me fail again." His legs didn't move. His mind screamed to run. But then he saw the shadow in the upstairs window. Clara, holding the baby, pounding on the glass. She looked down, eyes meeting his, wild with fear and pleading. Her lips moved, but he could not hear the words. Still, he understood. And he moved. Liam ran to a nearby garden hose, drenched a heavy wool blanket and flung it around his shoulders. Without hesitation, he barreled through the side entrance, shoulder first into the smoke. Inside, everything roared. Wood groaned above him, heat blistered against his arms. But he pushed forward up the stairs, gripping the rail with one hand and shielding his mouth with the other. "Clara!" he shouted. A faint cry answered. He kicked open the bedroom door. Smoke poured out, stinging his eyes. Clara was crouched on the floor, Lily wrapped in her arms. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Liam!" He crossed the room in seconds, yanked open the window, then turned to them. "Wrap her in your coat," he said hoarsely. "Now." Clara obeyed without question, bundling Lily close. Liam scooped the baby into one arm, then lifted Clara with the other. She gasped, but clung to him. "I've got you," he said, teeth gritted. With both pressed tightly against him, Liam pushed back into the smoke. The flames roared louder now. The stairs beneath his feet shifted, brittle with heat. He did not stop. One step. Then another. Then the floor gave slightly. He lunged forward, crashing through the doorway just as the ceiling behind them collapsed. The world behind them vanished in a roar of fire. Outside, neighbors gasped. Someone screamed. The fire engine had just turned the corner, lights flashing blue and red against the thick smoke. Liam emerged from the inferno, smoke billowing off his back, clothes singed, face blackened. Clara trembled in his arms, coughing, clutching Lily tightly to her chest. He lowered them to the grass before dropping to one knee, breath heaving. Firefighters rushed to them, taking over. One placed an oxygen mask over Liam's mouth. He shook it off, eyes only on Clara and Lily. Clara looked up at him, eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but no words came. He had saved them. Again. The steady beep of a heart monitor echoed softly through the dim hospital room. The antiseptic smell, the hume of fluorescent lights, the occasional squeak of a nurse's shoes in the hallway, everything felt sterile and distant, like a world apart from the one Clara had just escaped. Her eyelids fluttered open slowly. The first thing she felt was the ache in her arms, the memory of holding Lily too tight. She turned her head toward the crib by the window. The baby was there, fast asleep, wrapped in a fresh hospital blanket, safe, breathing, whole. Relief swept over her in a single tearful exhale. Then she looked toward the door. Across the hallway, through the open gap between two curtains, she saw him. Liam sat on the edge of a waiting room bench, left hand wrapped in fresh gauze, the other resting limp in his lap. His jacket was gone, his clothes replaced by a simple white t-shirt and scrub pants. His face was streaked with soot and exhaustion, and his eyes stared at the floor, glassy and far away, as if trapped in something only he could see. Clara pushed herself upright, ignoring the nurse's quiet protest, as she slipped out of bed and carefully padded across the cold tile floor. She stepped through the curtain and stopped in front of him. He looked up slowly. "You saved us. Again," she said softly. Liam gave a small nod, but his expression did not change. He looked back down at his hands. "You weren't supposed to be there," he murmured. "But maybe I was—" Something in his voice cracked, not just fatigue, but the weight of something deeper, a truth pressed between his ribs that he had carried too long. Clara didn't press. She just sat beside him on the bench, the silence between them thick, but not uncomfortable. They sat that way for a while, side by side, not speaking. The hospital noise faded around them. The air was still. Then, from down the hall, came the sound of soft fussing. Lily. Clara moved to stand, but Liam gently placed a hand on her arm. "I've got her," he said quietly. Before she could respond, he was already on his feet, walking toward the crib with a strange mix of caution and familiarity. He reached in with both arms and carefully lifted Lily, cradling her against his chest. "Shh," he whispered, rocking her gently. "You're okay. You're all right now." His voice was low, rough around the edges, but tender. Each word was barely audible, meant only for her. The baby nestled against him, her cries fading almost instantly. Her tiny fist clutched the collar of his shirt. Clara watched from the doorway, her arms folded across her chest, not in defense, but to hold herself together. The sight of him, so steady, so instinctively gentle, broke something open in her. Her throat tightened. Her eyes welled. She blinked hard, trying to push it back, but the tears came anyway. Not from fear, not even from gratitude. From a quiet, aching recognition. He had saved them, yes, but more than that, he had held them, protected them, and now, with no cameras, no spotlight, no one watching, he was still doing it. Liam turned slightly, rocking Lily in his arms. "She's a fighter," he said softly, "just like her mom." Clara smiled, a shaky, wet smile, and wiped at her cheeks. "I think she just knows a good man when she sees one." He looked at her then, his eyes not distant anymore, but steady and clear. For the first time since they had met, Clara felt the ground beneath her feet. And it felt like home. Dozens of them, spilling from around hedges, out of parked vans, some holding phones, others shoulder rigs and boom mics. The quiet park erupted in chaos. The stroller wheels jerked slightly as Clara flinched and reached instinctively for Lily, whose face squirmed at the sudden noise. Liam stepped forward, one arm across Clara's shoulder, as the crowd of reporters began to close in. "Clara! Is it true you faked your disappearance? Ms. Everson, who's the father of the baby? Are you in hiding from your investors? Liam, are you in a relationship with the CEO of Everson Global?" Flashes exploded, microphones shoved forward. Questions stabbed at them from every direction. Clara's heart raced. She wrapped both arms around the stroller as Lily began to fuss louder, overwhelmed by the sound and movement. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Fear, hot and immediate, curled into her throat. Then Liam moved. He stepped forward, not with aggression, not with bravado, but with calm, unmistakable certainty. He gently lifted Lily from the stroller, cradling her against his chest. The baby's cries quieted instantly. His other hand reached back and took Clara's, firm but steady. She looked at him, startled, but he only nodded, his eyes unwavering. He turned to face the wall of flashing lights and pointed questions. "She's more than a headline," he said, voice steady and low but clear enough for the crowd to fall silent. "She's a mother, a damn good one, and she deserves peace." Click, click, flash. No one spoke for a moment. The sound of Lily's quiet whimpering filled the air. Liam didn't wait. He turned back toward Clara and began walking, one arm around the baby, the other still holding her hand. His strides were sure, and he didn't look back. He didn't bow his head. He didn't flinch. Clara followed, stunned but moving, her legs barely remembering how to walk on their own. They pushed through the crowd, parting the sea of questions and rumors like a silent force field. No one dared step in front of him. When they rounded the corner and ducked down a smaller path lined with trees, the noise faded behind them. Only the sound of their breath and the rustling of leaves remained. Clara's heart pounded in her ears. Liam stopped under a tree, adjusting Lily's blanket with one hand while gently swaying her. He looked down at the baby, then up at Clara. "You all right?" he asked. Clara did not answer right away. Her eyes studied his face, the lines of concern, the soot-stained memory still lingering in his eyes, the strength in the way he held Lily like she was something sacred. She could still hear the echoes of the reporters' voices, the way they clawed for a soundbite, a scandal, a scoop, but all she could feel was safe. She reached out slowly, brushing a leaf from his shoulder. Her fingers lingered there. "You didn't have to do that," she said, voice quieter than the wind. "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." There was something in his voice, not just conviction, but gentleness. No agenda, no performance, just truth. For a moment they stood like that. Clara leaned slightly closer, the weight of exhaustion and gratitude pulling her toward him. Her gaze flicked to Lily, now fast asleep in his arms. "You do realize the entire city thinks we're together now," she said, half joking, half testing. Liam looked down at the baby, then back at her, one brow raised. "They might be onto something," he said. Clara blinked. He wasn't teasing. Not exactly. But he wasn't pushing either. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't want to run. She looked at him, truly looked, and this time, her eyes didn't flash with fear or caution. They softened. Because in that moment, she didn't see a man from a headline or a stranger who had helped her twice. She saw someone who stood in front of her, not to shield her from the world, but to walk through it beside her. And in her heart, something subtle shifted. She was not alone anymore. The days that followed unfolded gently, like pages of a story neither of them realized they were writing. There was no grand declaration, no sudden shift, only the slow, quiet rhythm of being together, sharing small things, letting moments fill the spaces once occupied by fear and doubt. Liam started coming by most evenings, never asked, never expected, just showed up. Sometimes he brought groceries, sometimes he cooked, most nights he brought nothing but himself, and somehow that felt like more than enough. They would eat dinner at Clara's modest apartment, Lily giggling in her high chair between bites of mashed carrots and the occasional bit of avocado smeared across her nose. Liam had a knack for making her laugh without trying. Silly faces, gravelly sound effects, soft hums that turned into lullabies by the time dessert was finished. After Lily was asleep, Clara and Liam would move to the couch, sometimes with a movie playing low in the background, sometimes with just their voices. "I forgot how good it feels to laugh," Clara said one night, smiling around the rim of her tea mug. "You're pretty good at it," Liam replied, nudging her shoulder gently. "I used to be. Before everything." She did not need to explain. He never asked her to. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long golden streaks across the hardwood floor, Liam fell unusually quiet. Clara noticed the way his hands fidgeted with the seam of the couch cushion, the way his gaze kept drifting toward the dark window, as if searching for something far away. "You okay?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "There was a fire. Years ago," he said finally. "A warehouse. My unit responded. We thought it was clear, but it wasn't. 2 of my guys didn't make it. I was the last one out." Clara sat still, not saying a word. "I couldn't save them. I tried. I tried like hell, but it wasn't enough." He looked down at his hands. "After that I couldn't sleep, couldn't walk into a building without hearing the beams groan or smelling smoke that wasn't there. So I quit." His voice was calm, but each word landed with weight, like stones skipping across a still lake. "I told myself I was done," he continued, "that I'd never run into a burning building again. Until you." Clara reached across the cushion, her fingers sliding gently into his. He looked at her, surprised. "You didn't fail them," she said quietly. "You came back for me, and that means everything." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence between them grew soft, warm. Clara leaned in, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. He let out a long breath, one that sounded like release. That night they sat together until Lily stirred in her crib. Liam rose first, padded softly to the baby's room, and returned a few minutes later with her, bundled in his arms. Clara watched him rock her, his chin resting lightly against her tiny head. The child's breaths slowed, her fist curled into his t-shirt. When he looked up again, Clara saw something new in his eyes. Not the man who had been haunted by what he could not save, but the man who stayed. And she knew this was not a chapter that would end. It was the beginning of something whole, something chosen, not because of their pasts, but in spite of them. The weeks passed quietly, in the kind of way that felt more like breathing than living, natural, steady, full. Liam continued his work at the driving school, occasionally fixing things around Clara's apartment without being asked. He and Clara had settled into a rhythm, not just as friends or co-guardians of Lily, but something deeper, unspoken, rooted in trust. But despite the peace they were building, there was still one thing that tugged at Clara's heart each time Liam walked home at night: the crumbling apartment complex where he lived. It was old, barely maintained. The stairwell lights flickered. The hallway always smelled faintly of mildew. His unit was small, clean only because Liam took care of it himself, not because the building deserved it. Clara had seen enough, and she had the means to do something, quietly. She made a call, just one, to a real estate firm that worked only in discretion. The next day, papers were drawn. Within a week, the building had a new owner. The tenants would remain. No rent increases. No forced renovations. Nothing flashy. Just dignity, and Liam would never know. At least, that was her plan, until a letter arrived. Liam found it wedged under his door one Friday evening. There was no return address, only his name written neatly across the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of thick cream paper held one line of typewritten text: "No one who runs into fire for a stranger should ever worry about rent. C. Heast." He stood still for a long moment, the paper resting in his hands. He read it once, twice, then sat on the edge of his bed, letting out a breath he had not realized he was holding. There was no signature, no logo, but he knew. He smiled, one of those rare, small, almost secret smiles that started in the chest before it reached the lips. His eyes glistened as he folded the letter and tucked it back into the envelope, careful not to crease it. He did not call her. He did not ask questions. He did not mention it the next day when he showed up at her apartment with coffee and muffins. But when Clara opened the door and met his eyes, he held her gaze just a second longer than usual. And that was enough. She knew he knew. And he knew what it meant. It was not about charity, or pride, or payment for saving her life. It was her way of saying, "I see you. I value you. You're not alone." It was love, spoken not in words, but in action. And Liam understood that sometimes the greatest kindness came quietly, needing no spotlight, no acknowledgement. Just two people choosing each other. over and over again. The ballroom shimmered with warm, golden lights strung delicately across the ceiling like constellations. People moved gracefully between round tables draped in white linens, laughter and soft music blending into a hum of celebration. The annual charity gala for the Everson Foundation was in full swing, an event dedicated to supporting displaced mothers and children, a cause that now lived in Clara's heart more than ever. Clara stood near the stage, dressed in an elegant deep blue gown, her blonde hair swept back in soft curls. She looked poised, radiant, and entirely present. But her eyes kept drifting across the room until they landed on him. Liam stood near the back in a simple suit, holding Lily in his arms. The baby clutched his tie in one tiny fist, babbling nonsense while he whispered something that made her giggle. He looked slightly uncomfortable among the tuxedos and champagne flutes, but only because he never craved attention. He caught Clara's eye and gave her a nod. She smiled, heart skipping. Later, when the speeches were finished and the room had settled into quiet anticipation, Clara stepped up to the podium. The spotlight hit her gently. "There's someone I want to thank," she began, voice calm but rich with meaning, "not just for tonight, or for helping me build this foundation, but for saving my life, in more ways than one." She looked directly at Liam as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sometimes, the greatest changes in our lives begin with the smallest decisions: a ride, a risk, a rescue. And sometimes, the most extraordinary people walk right into our lives not to fix us, but to walk with us, no matter what we've been through. She paused, then reached under the podium and pulled out a small, velvet-covered box. "Liam, would you come up here?" There was silence as Liam hesitated, then moved slowly toward the stage, Lily still nestled in his arm. When he reached her, Clara handed him the box. He opened it. Inside was a single silver key, a small photo of the three of them, Liam, Clara, and Lily on the couch, laughing, and a note in Clara's handwriting. "You gave me a ride to safety. Now let me drive you home." Liam looked at the photo, then the key, then at Clara. His voice, when it came, was low and certain. "Only if you'll be there. Every night." Clara's eyes brimmed with tears, a smile breaking wide across her face. "Always," she whispered. The room erupted in applause, but to Liam and Clara, the world had narrowed to just the two of them, and the tiny heartbeat between them that made everything else make sense. As Liam held Lily close and reached for Clara's hand, the lights dimmed slightly. The music swelled, and for the first time in a long time, they weren't escaping anything. They were going home, together. Sometimes, the most powerful stories begin not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet moment of kindness. A man offering his only taxi, a woman finding safety in a stranger's arms, and a baby whose presence brought two broken hearts together. Liam and Clara didn't fall in love at first sight. They chose love again and again, through fire, fear, and quiet courage. Because real love does not rescue, it stands beside you in silence, in storms, and in healing. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every week we bring you tales that heal, inspire, and remind you that even in a chaotic world, love always finds a way. Soul-Stirring Stories, where every story touches the soul. Click subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss the next beautiful journey.